We have lots to discuss in today's video, including the latest trade talk around the league. Today's trade rumors focusing on teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs and who they may be willing to move to get their deadline acquisitions. Plus, we have the latest on the Seattle Kraken, the Ottawa Senators, the Detroit Red Wings, and it's just going to be finally the deadline or the time we see a move involving Anaheim goaltender John Gibson. Plus, we have more activity on the NHL waiver wire. We have a big update as well in the Philadelphia Flyers getting a new arena down the road and a new partner that they're going to be working with. Plus, lots of injury updates and roster moves. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. First up, I want to discuss the news on the NHL waiver wire. We have had a busy day of waivers the past few days. We haven't had any claims, but we've had lots of players available. Yesterday, we've had Boston Bruins forward Mark McLaughlin and then Erik Brannstrom, defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks, on waivers. Neither player was picked up. They both cleared. Can be reassigned to their minor league affiliates. I was a little surprised Vancouver made that move, but we then found out today that Filip Hronek, of course, top pair defenseman who plays with Quinn Hughes, is almost ready to come back from injury and could very well play this week. So to me, I think they're waiving Brannstrom to make obviously room on the roster here. So that could be playing a role. If you look at some of the other D playing ahead of them, it's still a little bit of a surprising move. So we'll see where things go with the decor for the Vancouver Canucks. New on waivers today, we have a couple of players from the Minnesota Wild, including Ben Jones and Devin Shore, and the Tampa Bay Lightning have placed Gage Goncalves on waivers as well. So 3 players. I would say that the odds of all of them clearing are probably decent, but sometimes you just never know. Obviously, we'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow afternoon if indeed any of them have been picked up or if they can be reassigned. As I mentioned on the injury front, lots of updates there, which we'll get to in just a moment. But first, we do have a signing in Columbus. They've extended Zach Aston-Reese, who they picked up late in the offseason. He gets a 1-year contract extension at league minimum. So Aston-Reese will be remaining with the Blue Jackets for another season. We saw today that the Boston Bruins recalled forward Vinny Lettieri. So he's back up with the big club. In Utah, we found out that John Marino has been upgraded in his status. He's now considered day-to-day and could be able to play here very soon. So that's very positive news for Utah, who's been missing some significant pieces of their back end for a large chunk here of the season. In Colorado, a few updates from head coach Bednar denying reports that were out there regarding Gabe Landeskog. Apparently, there were some reports suggesting that he's been unable to skate on back-to-back days, and he's having flare-ups and keeping him off the ice. He says that's not the case, but they still don't have a timeline for his return either. So, he's progressing, but no timeline. So we still don't know if he's going to be able to play. I have a feeling that there's no chance. I just can't see him getting into the lineup during the regular season. I would think maybe, and I say just maybe, for the playoffs, but that's hard to say with any certainty. He's been out for so long. He's had so much issues with that knee that it's difficult to say if he can get to a point to play. They also updated a couple of the injuries. Sam Girard is now considered day-to-day, so he shouldn't be out too much longer. And Val Nichushkin is injured, of course, and he's going to be a little bit longer. He was making some progress, but it looks like he was having a little bit of a setback or a tough time, so they had to kind of change gears, and he's going to be a little bit longer being out. So that's the latest on that front. We got big news today out of Philadelphia. The Flyers announced plans for a new arena in conjunction with the NBA's Philadelphia 76ers. Now, one thing that kind of makes this deal a little bit unique is the fact that the ownership of the 76ers, the Blitzer Group, is also owns the New Jersey Devils. So obviously, another team in close proximity and another team in the same division going to be having shared ownership of the arena. So it's going to be in South Philly, and plans are right now in progress with the anticipation of the arena opening hopefully in 2031. So that's obviously 6 years from now. So it's a long ways out. Obviously, lots of work to be done. That tells us there wouldn't be a shovel in the ground for at least a couple of years. But at least they have an agreement in place to work together on a new multi-purpose arena that would be able to house both clubs. So look for that. We'll probably get more details here in the next little while, but certainly big news in Philadelphia. We've recently seen them also make significant upgrades to the Wells Fargo Center where they play today. So obviously, they'll be there. Those upgrades were, I think, important for them to continue having a good arena to get through to this next phase, since it's going to be a long stretch before the new arena would be ready. Another a piece of news today as well. The OHL today approved the sale of the OHL franchise in Brantford, which was owned by Ottawa Senators owner Michael Andlauer, and it's now officially been sold and transferred to Zach Hyman, NHL player for the Edmonton Oilers, and his family. Of course, we know Zach Hyman comes from a fairly wealthy family. We've heard lots about it. I know last year when he was scoring 50 goals, there was people criticizing him, saying he was been afforded opportunities because of his family's wealth, and he wouldn't be having the success if he didn't. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm sure his dad's money helped him put the puck in the net. And his dad has owned and been involved with his hockey career a lot. And when he was younger, people say that they, got involved in ownership levels and different levels of the own teams, give him opportunities, whatnot. And you know what? If he still wasn't good enough, he wouldn't have made it to the NHL. So I don't really think it's fair to criticize him. But at the end of the day, I think they're been in that kind of business for a long time. His family has had a lot of success, and of course he has as well. And they'll now be the owners of the Brantford OHL franchise. So we'll see how they do as OHL owners. Some other updates around the NHL as well. We're going to get to a lot of the trade rumors here. A bunch of different sources here. Some of it comes from Elliot Friedman's new 32 Thoughts podcast, a little bit from Frank Saravalli as well. We'll start with the Seattle Kraken. They're going to be a very interesting team to watch here. Elliot was referring to some of their stuff on his latest podcast that came out today. And I really think that they're a team that appears to be kind of in trouble here. I mean, one tidbit he mentioned was when they changed coaches and they hired Dan Bilesma, of course, who had a lot of success as their AHL coach. So it's not like, plus he has a previous NHL resume with success on it. So it's not like he's a new coach or whatnot. But he said that it sounds like when they were determining who the new coach was going to be, that there was a bit of a divide, that maybe Ron Francis himself wasn't sure that Bilesma was the right guy, that he wanted to hire Todd McLellan, and that there's others in the front office who wanted Bilesma, and they obviously won that battle. Of course, Todd McLellan now just recently hired by the Detroit Red Wings, and they're in the process of enjoying the new coach bump that teams often get after a coaching change, and you see a change in style or a change in systems and whatnot, and they've been on a 7-game heater ever since. So obviously, things haven't worked out for Seattle this year, but you got to think, to me, in my opinion, a lot of it has to do with the roster more so than the coach. I mean, Friedman did talk about the fact that Will Borgen, who was recently traded out of Seattle, one thing we didn't know, at least I hadn't heard previously until he mentioned this, that Borgen actually did want to be traded. He did ask for a move because he wasn't happy with his playing time. Of course, he got moved to the New York Rangers, and there's obviously speculation that he could be on the move again, since the Rangers are not where they want to be either. And other names in Seattle that, of course, has been out there. We've heard about Yanni Gourde, but he also mentioned a couple of names, including Oliver Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky. So a couple of veteran scoring wingers that could be had for the right price. I mean, the Seattle Kraken, they missed the playoffs in their first year. Obviously we're lower in the standings. They really came forward in the year 2 with a massive surge, got into the playoffs, 100-point season. They won a round. They made round 2 interesting. And then on the last year and this year, they've really taken a step back. To me, like I said, in that year 2, when they beat the Avalanche in the first round of the playoffs, to me, they just had everything go right. They had almost every player hitting career highs. It just didn't seem sustainable. That's when you look at the numbers and you look, okay, nothing went wrong. It's just unreasonable to think that could duplicate itself. So I saw them as a prime candidate or target, if you will, as a regression team. I didn't think they would regress that much, because that year they were such a high-scoring team. It was crazy. But here we are. But they got lots of names that are out there and potentially available. They're pretty much at a point now where the season, it's fair to say that they're out of it. And they are going to have to kind of retool again for next year. Now, is it going to finally be the year that we see a John Gibson trade? Elliotte Friedman certainly seems to think so. He's talked about the fact that the Ducks are still asking for what he refers to as a fairly high price tag, and that's obviously might have to change a bit. Will Anaheim retain some money? He's got 2 more years on his contract after the current one. A lot of people point to his numbers and analytics in the past couple of years not being great. This year, he's actually been pretty good. A lot of people think that if he can get on a better defensive team and get a lighter workload, that he can be a lot more effective. I mean, some people will agree and disagree with that take. I happen to think that I can't say for sure it's going to be a home run for a team to pick him up. But the way he's played this year, with Dostal taking on a bigger role between the pipes as well, you have to think that just very well might be the case. I mean, for 3-4 years there, Gibson was probably overworked and not supported enough. So you got all factors in everything. So a couple of teams that were mentioned as far as his future, like Friedman talked about the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes have been kind of flirting with a Gibson trade for a couple of years now. Will the flirting finally lead to something happening? There was some talk, not from Ellie, but I've seen another article suggesting his hometown Penguins. We obviously know the goaltending there hasn't been solid. I would think in that case, Kyle Dubas is probably looking to move Jerry. You'd think. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely teams out there. Like he was saying, what Elliot said was like, other teams have already kind of made some of their moves around goaltending. Like we saw the Avalanche and Blackwood, and like there's teams out there looking for sure. And there's just not a lot of guys that are probably going to move. So, the guy like Gibson is like, okay, well, maybe it's finally time. So we will see. But the belief is from Friedman that this is going to be the year that it happens. So it's just a matter of we'll see where things go. He also wonders if we could see another coaching change in Boston. Obviously, when Montgomery left, he's gone on to do great things in St. Louis and help them get things turned around. And the Bruins haven't really turned it around themselves. I mean, they're just on a 6-game losing streak. They're at a spot where they're down to a wild card team. And even then, if you look at the NHL.com standings, it goes by points. But you look at points percentage, and they're not in good shape. They are in serious danger of missing the playoffs at this point. They've got, I think it's 4 games more than Ottawa and Montreal, Detroit. And, like, they're all right there. Like, not only could Boston not make the playoffs, they could plunge. And it wouldn't take much. If they can't get their losing streak stopped, and then, of course, if you look at the way that the other 3 teams, like Detroit's been the hottest of Detroit, 7-game win streak. Then you got Montreal, I think they've won 7 or 8 of their last 10. And then Ottawa's at I think 6 or 7 of their last 10. And they had a little bit of a cold streak. They were hot, and they cooled, and they got hot again. So, if Ottawa plays a couple good games this week and it gets back to where they were, and then you got Montreal, Detroit been hot, they could all pass Boston. It could be a disaster. And I wouldn't be shocked to see it the way things have been trending there. Is Joe Sacco going to stick around? Or what Friedman was speculating is if there's another coach out there that the Bruins really like and think is a better long-term fit, he wonders if we could see another move in season. Now, of course, that doesn't always happen, and sometimes they will ride it out and just let it be until the end of the year. But if the guy that they want, if they think is a better option, don't be surprised if you see Boston make more moves. You have to think, like we talked about yesterday, a few trades, like looking at guys like, Justin Brazeau maybe, he's a UFA. Frederick, of course, is out there. I'm not sure we'll see a bigger move until the summer maybe. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But another coaching change would be crazy. It's rare to see 2 coaching changes within a calendar year, or even within, it's just not common. So we'll see what happens there. Frank Saravalli, one of his tidbits today was talking about the blue line of the Red Wings. And of course, with the recent 7-game search has got them back in the mix. There wasn't a lot long ago. A couple of weeks ago, Detroit and Montreal were not in the mix for playoffs. And then they've caught right up, right? They got hot at the same time that you saw the Senators lose Allmark and get a little bit cool. Like, they didn't go super cold, but they cooled down. And now it's like right tightened up. Penguins have been kind of hot and cold too. They're kind of hanging around, but Pittsburgh and Boston are in serious danger, in my opinion. Columbus has been the surprise team that's in that mix there too. And then really you got like the Flyers, Rangers, Islanders. Like, they're not that far behind. They're nipping up their heels. It's kind of crazy. But they mentioned, Frank mentioned Ryan Lindgren in New York, who's a pending UFA, maybe being an upgrade for the Red Wings. If Steve Yzerman's going to go out and spend any money to give his team a shot to try to get him into the playoffs, I think they got to add on the blue line. They've had a lot of injuries with their goaltenders, but they've got 3 capable guys there, between Husso and Lyon, etc. So, I think they're probably, if they're going to add, if Yzerman's going to help them, it's going to be on defense. And Lindgren, how much does he have left? His body's worn down, but because of the style he plays, but can he be a fit there? That could be a name to watch with the Red Wings. And Ottawa, there was talk yesterday from Bruce Garriock during their game against the Dallas Stars, saying how there's been no talks with Claude Giroux on an extension. Well, we saw Steve Staios, the GM of the Senators, also do a mid-season interview or media availability, plus he was on the Coming in Hot podcast with Jason York and Brent Wallace, and did a lengthy discussion there. And then Friedman was talking about Ottawa on the podcast, 32 Thoughts as well. And when it comes to Giroux, the general consensus, Staios didn't really want to talk about Giroux on the interview, which is understandable. They don't want to get into contract stuff, but Friedman said what a lot of people are thinking is that Claude Giroux came home to Ottawa, settled his family down. They've expanded their family since then. The belief is, as long as the team is good and he feels they're competitive, that he's going to stay. Now, Claude Giroux just had a birthday the other day, turned 37 years old. I don't know how much longer he wants to play. And what Elliott said, the same thing that I kind of said, was that they have time here. I don't think there's really any danger. I don't think Ottawa feels the pressure that if he's not signed by the deadline, we better move him or we're going to lose him. I don't think that's the feeling. They got him for nothing as a free agent. He's come in. The contract has played out extremely well. It's hard to believe it's already coming to an end. And to be honest, like I said, they're in the mix for playoffs right now. They've had a much better season. There's still a lot of runway left, especially if they do, kind of nail down a spot. I don't see any reason for him to go. I think he'd be content to stay and continue playing. And I wonder, though, if part of the reason they haven't, I wouldn't be shocked if they have like a mutual agreement to maybe just kind of, until they're both kind of ready. Does Giroux want to take some time and figure out how long he wants to play? Kind of like what Crosby did. Hard to say. Now, Crosby did that with a year left where Giroux was ready to expire. So we'll have to see. But the belief is, I don't think Ottawa fans have really anything to worry about. There's no sense that he wants to go anywhere else. In Toronto, of course, we know the target for them, the belief will be as a center, but you got to wonder if maybe they'll go for a D as well. Their power play has been not great lately. A lot of people really starting to put the questions. Mark Savard, is he the right guy to be leading that? How do they have so much talent and yet not, have some more success? It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but the problem is, like Bruce Boudreau was saying when he was being interviewed, asked about it, is you get all these star players. A lot of them like to be the distributor, and they like to be the ones that set things up, and then, they're just not used to setting their roles, and sometimes you just need to kind of have a more defined spot. I know they've been working on a 5-forward power play unit as well. Again, there's lots of talent there. I am sure they will get it figured out. But the problem that the Leafs have run into the last number of years is power plays dried up and offense is dried up in the offseason when time and space is much more at a minimum. And that's why they can't move forward. They have to get past that. Now, of course, we know they're going to add at the deadline. There's no doubt they're going to be a playoff team. Only question is, are they going to be in the 1 spot in the Atlantic or maybe the 2? I don't know that anybody else really catches them unless Tampa makes it really interesting. Either way, they're going to end up in a 2-3 matchup or in the 1 versus wildcard matchup. And as of today, based on point percentage, they would play the Ottawa Senators. And it would be a Battle of Ontario. And that would be a lot of fun. It's been way too long since we've seen that. But we know, like I said, a center would be their first preference. Name of Scott Laughton in Philadelphia has come up a bunch. Belief is that Philly is not real crazy about moving Laughton. Friedman on his podcast was saying that he had heard that another team had approached Philly about Lawton and making a trade, and they asked for a first-round pick. And for a guy that's like a third liner, that's a lot of money. That's like a lot of money, big payment on a trade. And so that's kind of like saying no without saying no. You put the price so high that nobody's going to pay it. So as much as Lawton might be a good fit on some of these contenders, they don't seem to be really wanting to part with them unless you're willing to pay a ridiculous price. So I'm not sure that Lawton is really going to be a great option. But another big topic today in Toronto is, who are they going to move? What are they going to use for assets in terms of making a splash at the deadline to get ready for playoffs? The belief is Nick Robertson is somebody that they're probably quite comfortable parting with unless he goes on a ridiculous tear in the second half. The big thing with Robertson is he's been really streaky, hot and cold. You might not get anything out of him for 20 games, and then you might have 5, 6, 7 games where he scores a bunch. But then it'll go quiet again, right? So, obviously some consistency. So, a lot of that between Robertson and then a lot of debate on would they move Easton Cowan or Fraser Minton. And, I heard Darren Dreger talking about the Leafs tonight too, and he said he doesn't think that Brad Treliving would be crazy about moving his first-round pick this year. But again, like he said, he may not have a choice. If there's a player and an upgrade he really wants to make, the prices might be there that he may not have a choice if he wants to do it. So we'll have to wait and see. But the big thing in Toronto is, what are they prepared to put out there to get what they need? I mean, you have to think with the coaching change to Craig Berube and, with the pending UFA contracts of Marner and Tavares, this team could look different next year. Maybe they all come back, who knows? But I have to think that there's a very high amount of pressure, like maybe even more than before, to get more playoff success, try to get a Stanley Cup before you have the possibility of this group not being together. So what are they willing to do? Those prospects are important to them. They don't have a lot of grade A prospects because they've traded so much in the past to be going for it in the playoffs. What do they think about those guys, and what are they willing to do if it means getting them a cup this year? So let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.